Hello everyone, I'm Slava, and today we have another video about the F15 in a pretty good configuration with the engine everyone is after. Now let's talk about the exterior. It's quite classic with plenty of interesting features. We'll also discuss what's missing and what would be nice to add. Plus, we'll take a short test drive and I'll share my impressions. So, let's go. A quick note, we're filming at our service on the left bank. Yesterday we prepared the cars for filming, and today it's raining, so the puddles haven't dried and we washed the floor. Don't pay attention to that. Now let's start with the exterior. As we can see, there's no M package. The look is quite classic. In my opinion, this car's configuration and appearance are meant for a serious man who isn't chasing flashy details. It's quite classic and restrained in this case. There's no M package here and it hasn't been modified yet. The chrome kidney grills remain, keeping it traditional. Since we're at the front of the car, let's check out the equipment that stands out right away. One key feature, which many F15s don't have, is adaptive LED headlights. They immediately refresh the car's appearance, making it look more expensive visually. Plus, they provide excellent lighting, which enhances safety, a significant factor. We also see a front camera, which means this F15 is equipped with a camera system. There's also a radar indicating the presence of adaptive cruise control. As for parking sensors, that's expected. It would be strange if an F15 didn't have them. Moving to the rear, as I mentioned, there's no M package. There's an unpainted black trim piece. In terms of additional options, we can see a rear view camera, and as I said, parking sensors all around. Overall, I like the classic look of this X5. As we can see, the wheels have a fairly classic design, 20-inch. They look great and complement the overall appearance of the car. Now about the engine. As I mentioned, most people are after this particular engine modification. I'll explain why I think so. This is just my personal opinion. Since this is an X5, most people don't buy it for racing, but for a more dynamic driving experience. There are versions like the X5M, which many would choose for that. In this case, however, it's a non-M package, gray, and most likely originally bought by a serious man who wanted a car purely for driving pleasure with no intention of racing. That's why most people consider diesel a great choice. It offers reasonable fuel consumption. For example, there's the 25D diesel, which we previously reviewed. You can check it out via the link. It's efficient, as I've said before, but if you want extra power now and then, most people will think twice. Interestingly, I often get asked whether the 25D is enough for the X5. Surprisingly, I say yes, it is. But in general, people find it lacking, which is why everyone wants the 3.0L diesel. Naturally, the legendary 3.0L diesel, check out our video on the N-Fit 7 engine for more details. Since the 3.0L diesel is in high demand for the X5, prices for these versions are quite high. The most basic modification is the 30D, which I believe will be enough for 90% of buyers. It offers a well-balanced price-to-performance ratio, but of course many want something more powerful. For those wanting the most power available in this body style, the 40D comes to the rescue. It's a well-balanced option with 313 horsepower, decent dynamics, and reasonable fuel consumption. Of course, you might say there's also the 50D, but that's a unicorn. You're unlikely to find one. The price is on a completely different level, and maintenance costs are higher. Plus, the F15 is already reaching an age and mileage, especially for diesel models from Europe. This one, by the way, was imported from Europe, where issues will start to appear, no matter how reliable the engine is. With the 50D, nearly everything is unique. It's rare, parts are harder to find and more expensive, making it quite exclusive. That's why the 40D is a great choice. In terms of power, the 40D is generally sufficient. If you really want more, it can be tuned. As for reliability, unfortunately, I've encountered some issues with these engines. You know, I have a 640D, you can check the link, and I had some concerns about the engine, but overall, if you don't tune it or interfere with it, there won't be any issues. More precisely, if you avoid bad tunes. which can cause problems. By the way, we can do tuning. We've flashed several of these cars and there were no issues at all. Of course, the key is to maintain them properly. Using good quality fuel is crucial, and unfortunately we do have some issues with that. However, for cars with a clear history, where no one has tampered with them, there shouldn't be any major problems. A bit about the obvious, though not particularly exciting, is that it's all-wheel drive. The F15, as we know, can be rear-wheel drive, which was a big surprise to me, and it comes with the 8 HP transmission. There are practically no issues with the transmission. It's very reliable. Neither the drive shafts nor the transfer case suffer in these cars. In contrast to the F10 all-wheel drives, the F15 doesn't have any issues at all. I believe the F10 transmission issues arise because of the different kind of people who buy them. Many of them try to drift in parking lots or mess around in the snow, starting from 2 pedals and so on. This leads to problems, usually when the steering wheel is fully turned and you're sliding sideways. As a result, the front drive shafts break and there are issues with the transfer case. But with the F15, as I said, I think it's bought by more established individuals who don't have anything to prove and don't fool around in parking lots, so they experience fewer problems. As someone with let's say, a BMW brain like many others, I used to think that an M package would make even a trash can look cool, but I guess I'm getting older, so as I said with the 640, I'll say it here too, honestly, with the LED headlights, even in this color with these nice wheels, the car's exterior looks really good. It's classic, not overdone, and I like it overall. Honestly, the M package isn't even necessary here. Now let's head inside. That's where the most interesting and important part is for me. As I mentioned, the car is from Europe, and I'll draw an analogy with my 640. What surprised and disappointed me about this car's configuration is that it lacks keyless entry. I don't understand why Europeans spec their cars this way. It has a lot of pretty cool and expensive options, but no keyless entry. I don't get it. But anyway, let's go inside and see what's there. Moving to the interior, I can't get enough of the options installed here, which are some of the most important for me. First and foremost, the comfortable seats. When you sit in them, you just enjoy the ride. Also, the M steering wheel, which is quite important. It was one of the first upgrades I made on my 640, and I recommend it to you as well. If you have a regular steering wheel, get the M wheel right away. It makes a huge difference. It's like practically you're holding onto it the entire time you drive. It has a really great grip, and it immediately changes the driving experience. It seems like a small modification, but it drastically alters how the car feels to drive. Of the options that I would have liked to have in my 6, which I've mentioned before and don't have, I'd really like to try the seat ventilation. I haven't had the chance to drive with it for an extended period yet. So here's the top combination. Comfortable seats with ventilation, and it also has seat heating for all seats. By the way, if there's a heated steering wheel, we don't have that here. But it does have an electric steering wheel adjustment. As for the interior color scheme and decor, it's quite classic, and overall it looks good. Specifically, brushed aluminum, black leather, and a light-colored ceiling. There's also a panoramic roof. Everything looks great, pretty classic. I think 90% of people will like it. Nothing too unusual, so to speak. Nothing that could be considered for a particular taste. Also, one of the nice options that I think many people pay attention to and find necessary is the music system. This one has the Harman Kardon setup and it sounds great. I think 90% of people, even those who consider themselves melomaniacs, will find it sufficient. We can also see that the cabin has ambient lighting, and another nice feature that immediately catches the eye is the heads-up display. One thing that's missing here is the instrument cluster. It's the regular one, not the extended version. It's not LED, and I can't say that it's absolutely necessary. In principle, this can be added if desired, and it's relatively easy to install. Also, one thing I would like to see here is, I feel like the NBT Evo with CarPlay support is missing here. For a car that's not exactly budget-friendly, it would be nice to have, as it adds modernity and convenience. I think for 90% of people who drive this car, strange as it sounds, they'll be using iPhones, so having CarPlay would be quite convenient. By the way, regarding the decor, I mentioned in the video about the F25 models for my friends, which we were selecting. Yes, I remember you helped with the selection and reviewed a lot of F15s. About the brushed aluminum, there's this issue I noticed as well. It gets scratched up very easily and it's quite worn down. You can see a lot of scratches here, especially on the door. This is, of course, unpleasant. I like how it looks, but apparently I think even though on most or even all of the cars we've seen with polished aluminum, it looks all scratched up and in quite a sorry state. So when the car was bought new, of course, it's nice when such a decor is installed, but in the case of a used car, it's probably better to choose some kind of wood that I don't like, and it will likely be in better condition, or maybe do something with it like tuning, DIY modifications, let's say, I don't know, some kind of paint. No film, well, this is solvable, of course, it's a small thing, but still pay attention to it. As for the options that immediately stand out, and in my opinion, they are the most important, it's all kinds of seats, steering wheel, and similar things. I've already mentioned them. And now I'll talk about the assistants. I always put them second, but it's nice when they're there. Considering it's now the year 2023, it's great when they're there. Let's go through the assistants. We have a radar, as I mentioned, adaptive cruise control, collision warning, blind spot monitoring. Well, a good set of options to relax even more on the road. Also, by the way, the car is equipped with adaptive suspension, which combined with these seats provides maximum comfort while driving. If we compare it with the 6 Series, for example, it's very comfortable. Sorry for so many comparisons with the 6 Series, but I think the most objective comparison is with the car you drive every day. You feel how it drives, you know, all its nuances. You've experienced it while driving on different roads and under different conditions, so to speak. Accordingly, it's clear that considering our roads, SUVs and crossovers are likely to be more comfortable due to their larger tire profile than sedans. And thanks to that, basically, with the large tire profile and the full set of options, just like in my 6 Series, on larger bumps and potholes, it will probably be more comfortable. We'll take a ride and I'll tell you more. Also, why most people here choose crossovers and SUVs is the ground clearance, which allows you not to worry too much about the road conditions like potholes and such. We're driving on a pretty bad road and nothing is bothering us, potholes and so on. Overall, as I've said many times, I like the F15. It's a car for everyday use, and I would gladly take one for myself. Well, I guess I have 2 favorites as a replacement car, so to speak, for the full 6 Series. This is the G30, the G31. Even with a 2-liter diesel, I would take it. It would be enough for me, or the X15 again. I would take the 2-liter diesel. Just the 3-liter diesel is more expensive, but the 2 liters would be enough for me. For pleasure, I have the 335, by the way. Stay tuned. There will be a new series on it soon with a lot of changes. As for the seats, well, as I said, they are comfortable seats. And as we know, BMW is top-notch. So there are no questions at all. I really like it. The steering wheel is soft. Despite the fact that it has 20-inch wheels, it's a big car, but the steering is quite soft in terms of settings. Well, basically, it would be suitable for a woman. There won't be that issue that most BMWs are known for with the heavy steering. Oh, somewhere it might be tiring, but no, there's none of that here. In comfort mode, it's soft, but at the same time quite informative. By the way, the steering feedback is surprisingly sharp for a crossover. Well, I've mentioned before, in general, it doesn't differ from other F15 models in this regard. I'll talk about the seating position again. Honestly, the seating position is almost perfect. You sit high, you can see everything, but by the way, there's a big plus for me in the F15 compared to, for example, the X3, that you can adjust the seat to your liking, sit lower, and basically you won't be sitting like on a stool as it was in the X3. You'll be sitting relatively low, which I like. It's comfortable with the steering wheel. Everything is great, but at the same time, because the car is high, the visibility is excellent. On highways during overtaking, that's actually a big plus compared to low cars, as you can see everything with a clear view. So there's a significant advantage in that. We'll get on a good road now, step on it a bit and see how it goes. How does it feel? The whole ecosystem is in place here, and this modification has AdBlue. Well, basically, it drives well, and I think this will be enough. As I said, the 25 diesel is also sufficient, but here it's clear that there's extra power for more active driving, overtaking, and so on. It's lightly raining right now, the road is wet, so we'll switch to sport mode and also put the transmission in sport. We'll do a measurement with just one pedal in what you'd call standard, roughly speaking, conditions, like when you're stopped at a traffic light, and see the real dynamics under, let's say, unfavorable conditions. All right, let's see how it drives, 0 to 100. Let's do a quick first measurement. 7.3, by the way, not a bad result in the worst possible conditions with two of us in the car. With one pedal, we showed 7.3. For an ideal result, you'd need to start with two pedals, one person in the car, and on dry roads. The claimed figure in the specs is 5.9, but I think 6 is easily achievable. It will hit those numbers without any problem. 6 seconds, by the way, is very fast for the X5. Actually, it's fast in general, which shows there's a lot of power reserve here. But I want to note, when you press the gas, the car has good sound insulation, it's quite comfortable, and it's big. You don't get the feeling that you're accelerating quickly. Everything happens smoothly and steadily with stable power delivery and smooth gear shifts. So it seems like the dynamics are much worse than they actually are, but this perception is misleading when it comes to comfortable, large, quiet cars. When you get into a 3 Series and accelerate to 100 km/h in 6 seconds or even 7, it gives you much more excitement. That's obvious. If you want emotions, you should get a 3 Series, preferably with a 6-cylinder, 3-liter gasoline engine like I did. And it's even better with a manual transmission and rear-wheel drive, but that's a whole different story. Here we're talking about comfort. You get in with your family, load the car full, big trunk, and in the city you don't really worry much about potholes. When it comes to parking near the curb, we're not promoting driving up on curbs or anything like that, which some people like to do. But at least with a Jeep and high-profile tires, you don't have to worry about damaging your wheels or scraping the curb. And for a woman, it's much more convenient and comfortable with fewer problems and inconveniences compared to a low car. Even a simple trip to the countryside, to the dacha, or into the forest, if you're not lowering your E92, for example, you might think you can go everywhere in your regular sedan, but still, there's always the risk of scraping the undercarriage or hitting something, which can put a damper on your mood. With an SUV, you don't have to worry about that. You can go pretty much anywhere within reason. In winter, you'll also feel more confident, even though we don't really have much of a winter here. But on those 2 or 3 days a year, you'll have more confidence than others on the road. As for the brakes, they're quite responsive and good, by the way. I won't say anything new. F15, X15, both are well balanced, great cars with a comfortable suspension, good soundproofing, and in the case of the 40D, decent performance. Based on my personal experience, I can say that in the city, the fuel consumption will be around 10, 12 liters. 12 liters is if you're not too concerned and driving through traffic jams. I just checked, the dashboard now. Our average fuel consumption shows 11.3 liters. In principle, I get roughly the same on a front-wheel drive car. The weight is similar, by the way. In the case of the F15, I think it's just a bit heavier. That's a beast driving next to us. Smart. It's definitely impressive. As for fuel consumption, I haven't driven on the highway yet, but I think for the X15, being large with mediocre aerodynamics and big wheels, if you're driving at a moderate speed around 130, 140 kilometers per hour, the fuel consumption would probably be around 8 to 9 liters. In the city, again, if you're not being too picky, it'll be between 11, 12 liters. I'll compare it with the same gasoline engine again. By the way, I'll mention this comparison because I've driven it, and we also have a video on the F15 with the N55 engine. You can check it out via the link. Here's the 40D. It's approximately similar in dynamics to the F55 engine, and their potential is also quite similar. It's a pity we didn't have the race with the 535i of our project F106, but nevertheless, I think that in stock form and tuning potential, they are quite similar. But the 40D has a definite advantage. Fuel consumption. In the N55 engine, most likely you won't achieve that fuel consumption. Well, you definitely won't achieve that kind of fuel economy, and you'll see the numbers in the city. I've spoken with clients, and the F15 with the N55 engine will have a fuel consumption of at least 15 liters in the city, no matter how hard you try. And if you don't focus on driving in an economical way, let's say, and sometimes even push it a bit, it will be around 18 to 20. Here, it's around 11 to 12, maybe 13 liters of fuel consumption, which is quite a significant difference. Of course, you can say that when you're buying a car for 30 plus, in the case of the 40D, closer to 40. Fuel consumption is unlikely to bother you much there, and you probably won't be overly concerned about it. But nevertheless, it might matter to some people. After all, some folks, when buying a new car for $100,000, go ahead and install gas, for example, like Toyota enthusiasts. Hello to you? Or they might choose some diesel engines with smaller displacement. Well, at the same time, he goes for the top-tier configuration. Not everyone cares about performance, plus many diesel fans believe that no matter what, a diesel engine will still be more reliable than a petrol one. There's not much to argue about on this one. Yeah, it's clear that there are these myths that diesel engines are reliable up to a certain mileage, and then you'll end up with expensive repairs in the fuel system. Well, you'll end up overpaying, so to speak, for all the savings when it comes to repairs, especially if something goes wrong with the fuel system and the like. But honestly, experience shows that in the case of BMWs, there are practically no issues with the fuel system. Problems may only arise if you blatantly refuel at some questionable gas station with really poor quality fuel. In that case, issues might occur, but otherwise, there are no significant problems. If we're talking about high mileage and issues with the engines that can occur, the cost of repairing or replacing a 3-liter diesel or 3-liter gasoline engine is more or less the same, so in this case, there are no issues. Turbos are a common problem as well, with repair and maintenance costs being more or less similar. However, in the N55 gasoline engine, as we all know, there are injector issues which, as I mentioned, are not present in diesel engines. And if they do occur, it's at a significantly higher mileage compared to the N55 engine. By the way, speaking of potholes, I'll mention again that the suspension is quite comfortable. I think the large wheels with high-profile tires play an important role here. Again, you can check out videos about the N55 engine, which has quite a long list of issues that will bother you before 200,000 kilometers of mileage. In the case of a diesel engine, you won't face any major problems within that mileage, assuming proper maintenance, which is, again, a crucial detail. All the problems, or rather most of them, that arise earlier at lower mileage are related to maintenance. If you frequently change the oil, replace filters on time, and service the car according to the schedule, most likely you won't encounter issues for a long time. However, these cars are not new, so it's clear they won't be trouble-free from the start. So you can't check how the car was maintained before. This means problems could arise at lower mileage. Overall, we should understand that for gasoline engines, issues may appear before 200,000 kilometers, while a diesel engine should run almost problem-free up to 300,000 kilometers. Now we're driving through an industrial area with bad roads, and once again, I want to point out that for these kinds of conditions, where you don't have to worry about where you've driven, whether it's potholes or uneven surfaces, this setup works perfectly. Oops. Potholes and the like are hardly noticeable. You don't worry about scraping the bumper somewhere or hitting the underbody or skid plates. In today's world, scraping the undercarriage is, well, not ideal, quite expensive. Here, it's not just about the comfort of the suspension, but the overall convenience of use. That's why SUVs and crossovers have their advantages. I sometimes think about how I've always been a fan of passenger cars, sedans, wagons, those were my favorites. But you start realizing that as a family car, for convenience, especially if your significant other is driving it, it makes sense. Why should she have to struggle or worry about scraping a wheel, bumper, or something getting scratched? With SUVs, there's no such problem. You just drive, you don't worry about it, you're comfortable. And there's a lot of advantages. So I'm coming more and more to the conclusion that basically you've got to get a parklet. Well, it's a great choice, let's put it that way. As I mentioned, most people are looking for a 40D, preferably from Europe with not too high mileage, but this one has 200,000 kilometers. The market for these cars is around $40,000, depending on the trim and condition. By the way, many people sometimes ask if we have any cars for sale, and this one is up for sale. It's roughly in the market range, as I mentioned, with a good trim, in decent condition, not an American accident car, and with the highly desirable 40D modification. So if you're interested, we'll provide a link and you can check out this car and get a full diagnostic from us. We'll tell you about all the details and nuances it has. To summarize this car, my opinion and conclusions. Despite, as I've already mentioned, the lack of a package, the car's exterior looks quite sleek. Let's say, of course, most people would probably choose black or maybe white, although honestly a white car without the package and with plastic trim feels cheaper. But here we have a nice balance in terms of appearance, a good trim, I'd even say a cool one, great driving qualities, comfortable, quiet, and as we saw during the measurements, this engine is more than enough for any conditions. In the city, on the highway, during overtakes. With variable fuel consumption and good reliability, I think this will be the sweet spot. As I said, most people will want to choose a similar modification. So stay with us, keep an eye on our new videos, and now we'll get back to work.